That drab little vase at the back of the shelf, the muddy brown one, or the dull matte green one, shaped like nothing in particular, the one you've dusted around for 30 years and never once picked up, might be worth $12, or it might quietly be worth 12,000. 10 homely old vases tonight. Some have crossed the auction block for a few $100s, some for thousands, and one for a number that would make you sit down in the nearest chair. And the plainest one of all, the kind nearly every American home has sitting on a shelf or a windowsill somewhere, is waiting at number 1. Let's find out what's really on that shelf before you set it out on the rummage table for $1. Keep a pen and paper by your chair, because you're going to want to write 2 or 3 of these names down before the night is over. A quick word before we start. This is general information to help you identify and enjoy your pieces, not a formal appraisal. Values move with condition, the market, and the day. Anything you believe is valuable, have it looked at in person before you sell it. Here's the truth most folks never hear. With a vase, value does not live in how pretty it is or how big it is. It lives in the mark pressed into the bottom, the glaze, the shape, and the condition. Some of the ugliest pots ever made in this country are the ones collectors chase the hardest, and some of the prettiest are worth their face and nothing more. So let me be honest with you, the way a real dealer would. My name is Walter Ashford. For 40 years I've bought and sold at estate sales, farm auctions and house clearances across the Midwest. And I'm a dealer, not a certified appraiser, and that is exactly why I'll tell you the plain truth. Your vase is almost certainly not the crumpled, dented masterpiece by a man called George Orr that crossed a New York block for well past $100,000. Only a handful of people ever made pots like that, but the gap between a $10 vase and a $2,000 one hides in plain sight, and you can learn to see it tonight. The name on the front is the story they tell you. The mark on the bottom is the truth. Turn it over, read the bottom, believe what it tells you. With a vase, the bottom is where the whole story is written. In a pressed mark, most people never once thought to look for. Here's why this matters, and why these plain pots are sitting in your house to begin with. 100 years ago, this country was full of art potteries, in Ohio especially and back east, turning out vases by the tens of thousands. Some were the fine pieces of their day, painted by hand, and they all got handed down the same way, shoved to the back of the cabinet, filled with dusty silk flowers, and forgotten. If somebody once told you that old brown vase was just an old brown vase, that was not carelessness on your part. Nobody ever taught you to turn it over and read what's pressed there. Tonight, somebody will. Number 10. Weller. Weller of Ohio was one of the giants, running from the 1880s clear into the 1940s. The line to know is Luelsa, the dark one, hand-painted, deep brown and gold, flowers and portraits under a glossy glaze. Your first thought is probably that it's gloomy and old-fashioned, the kind of thing that lived in a great-aunt's parlor. But because Luelsa was hand-decorated, the good early pieces carry real money. Hand-decorated Luelsa from before 1930 has sold from a couple $100s up into the low thousands, and a rare hand-painted portrait vase reached the high 2000s at auction. Here's your test tonight. Tilt a Luelsa slowly under a lamp. If it's truly hand-painted, you'll see tiny ridges where the brush loaded and lifted. A printed one sits dead flat. The loss I see most often is the dark, hand-painted ones getting called ugly and set out for $1, while the common late molded Weller, worth $20 to $60, gets kept because it's cheerful. Number 9. Number 9. Van Briggle. Now, the first thing out of most people's mouths is, they still make these, mine's probably new and worthless. Fair enough, because Van Briggle is one of the few that never closed. But here is what that misses. It was founded in 1901 out in Colorado Springs by Artis Van Briggle and his wife Anne. And that joined AA mark is the two of them, Artis and Anne. Artis died young, in 1904, and Anne kept it going. The money is in the early, dated pieces. Early dated Artis period vases have sold from several $100s up toward $2,500, while the modern gift shop ones made in recent decades are common, $30 or $40. Your test, turn it over, find the AA, and look for a date or a Roman numeral pressed in beside it. An early dated one is the treasure. One marked only Colorado Springs, with no date is later. The loss here is people assuming all of it is the modern kind, and letting an early dated one walk out in a box lot. Number 8. McCoy. And here I have to be honest with you, because this is the one where the fame runs ahead of the value. McCoy was a hugely popular Ohio pottery that made an ocean of vases, planters, and cookie jars. And because everybody's heard the name, everybody assumes theirs is the rare one. I will not inflate this for you. Most McCoy vases and planters honestly sell for $20 to $60, and the cookie jars run $50 to $500, with most of them down at the low end. Worse, the cookie jar market got flooded with reproductions years ago, so a McCoy jar priced high needs checking against a documented original first. But the loss here runs the other way. Someone paying $200 for a reproduction jar. Fame is not value. Number 7. Hull. Hull, another Ohio maker, is the soft pastel one. Chalky matte glazes with raised flowers, and the family says grandma's flower vase, worth nothing. But the pre-1950 matte art lines are the ones collectors want. The patterns named Wildflower, Orchid, Calla Lily, Bowknot, and Woodland. A wildflower floor vase in mint condition sold for $875, and an orchid console bowl with its original gold trim brought around $400. Now the honest part. After a factory fire in 1950, Hull switched to shiny glossy glazes, and that later glossy ware is worth far less. So your test is matte versus glossy. The soft, chalky, matte pastels are the money. And you read the pattern name and number pressed right into the base. And mind the handles, because a little chip on one of those delicate bowknot handles cuts the value in half in a hurry. Now, hold on, because the next few are where most folks get it backwards. The uglier, heavier, and stranger the pot, the more careful you want to be about what you're actually holding. Number 6. Niloak. This one gets mistaken for somebody's craft class project every time. Niloak, which is just the word kaolin, a kind of clay, spelled backward, came out of Benton, Arkansas, from about 1910 into the 1930s. Their Mission Swirl line is swirled natural clays, brown and blue and cream marbled right through the body, no two alike. Most Mission Swirl pieces have sold from $40 to $90 for the small ones, up to a couple hundred for the larger, better marbled vases. I'll be honest, this is not the fortune of the list, but it's real money for a thing people give away. Your test. The swirl runs all the way through the clay. It is not painted on the surface, so look at a chip or the unglazed foot, and read the die-stamped or paper label, Niloak name. Before we get to the top 5, there's something almost nobody stops to realize. The vase that turns out to be worth real money almost never looks like it. Now, number 5. Number 5. Fulper. Fulper, out of New Jersey, made an arts and crafts art line with thick, dramatic glazes, and people write them off as heavy and drippy, like a factory reject. That drippy glaze is exactly the point. It's called flambe, crystals suspended in the glaze that run down the pot like flame. Good Fulper flambe vases have sold from a few $100s on up, and appraisers put the best multicolor flambe examples around $2,500 to $3,500. And let me be honest, the way a real dealer should, that $3,500 is the top of a range, not a promise on every one you find. Here's the important test. Turn it over and look for the vertical racetrack ink stamp, a tall oval outline with the name Fulper reading up the inside of it. That vertical racetrack tells you it's the older artware, made after about 1917. The loss I see most is one of these sold as a heavy old lamp base for $5, because the glaze looked like a mistake. Number 4. Roseville. Roseville of Ohio is one of the most collected American potteries there is, and people get it wrong two opposite ways. Either they think everything Roseville is gold, or they look at a drab example and think this plain thing can't be the good stuff. The money is in specific patterns, and often the deco, restrained ones. Ordinary Roseville runs $50 to $300. Their pine cone pattern has sold from around $50 to $600, with the blue examples bringing more than the green or brown. A rare experimental brown pine cone floor vase sold for $7,000, and the wild Art Deco Futura forms have sold from around $800 up to $2,700, with a rare Futura tank vase crossing the block for $25,200. Now the warning, and it's a big one. Roseville is one of the most reproduced potteries in the world, and the market flooded with overseas fakes back in the 1990s. And I'll tell you plainly, I got burned on this one myself, early on. I bought a pinecone vase I was sure of, paid real money, and it turned out to be a reproduction. Here's what I didn't know then and you'll know now. On a fake, the molded pine cones and needles look soft and mushy, where the real ones are crisp. The raised Roseville USA mark on a fake is too crisp and too perfectly centered, where a genuine one feels a little grainy with softer edges. And the fakes are often heavier, with a chalky white or bright orange clay instead of the old buff gray. Your test tonight. Run your thumbnail over the pine cones, crisp or mushy, and read that raised mark. Number 3. Rookwood. Here's a plain-looking brown vase people set right next to a dime store one and can't tell apart. Rookwood, of Cincinnati, is the most celebrated American art pottery of them all. Going back to 1880, the plain molded production ware, the bookends and ashtrays, and simple vases, is modest, $30 to $300. But the hand-painted, artist-signed scenic pieces, the vellum landscapes especially, have sold from $1,500 to $8,000 and well beyond, and a single scenic vellum plaque by one of their named artists brought over $10,000 at auction. And this is the best mark reading test on the whole list. Turn it over and look for the impressed flame mark, an R and a P set back to back with little flames around them. Count the flames. One flame is 1887, and they added one every year up to 14 flames in the year 1900. After that they added a Roman numeral underneath, so 14 flames with XXII under them is 1922. Then look for an artist's small initials scratched into the base, because that signature is where the thousands of dollars live. The loss I see most is the plain one and the fine artist one looking almost alike. So the family keeps the shiny vase and sells the Rookwood. Number 2. Number 2. George Orr, the man from the opening, called himself the Mad Potter of Biloxi, down in Mississippi, and he worked around the turn of the last century. He threw pots with walls as thin as an eggshell, then crumpled them, dented them, pinched and folded and twisted them, on purpose. In his own lifetime, he could barely give them away at 25 cents a piece, so he crated up thousands, and they sat in storage for decades. Today, genuine ore pots have sold from a few $1,000s into the tens of thousands, and the very best of them past $100,000, with recent examples at $120,000 and $177,000. Now let me be honest, the way I always will be. Those six-figure numbers are the museum-grade top of the market, not every dented pot on a shelf. Your test. The real ones are astonishingly thin and light for their size. The ugliness is deliberate and skillful, not clumsy, and his name is stamped or scratched into the base, or of Biloxi. This is the whole idea of tonight, in one pot. It gets thrown out precisely because it looks broken and homemade, when broken looking was the entire point. And number 1. The vase nearly every single one of you already owns without thinking about it. The plain matte console vase. Long and low and footed, dull green or tan or blue, a drippy glaze running down the sides, no pattern, and often no clear mark at all. Everyone has one, so everyone assumes it's worthless. These were made by the tens of millions from the 1920s through the 50s, by dozens of makers, for every dime store in America. Fame is not value, and I will not inflate this for you. Most of these console vases are honestly worth $10 to $40, about what a nice lunch costs, because the whole world already has one. But here is the whole point of this video. Turn it over, because in a box of these dollar store console vases, more than once in 40 years, I have found the exact same drab shape carrying a Rookwood flame, or a Fulper racetrack, or an early Van Briggle date. The plain ones and the treasures wear the very same disguise, and the only place you tell them apart is on the bottom. Let me tell you about a woman I'll call Harriet. She was widowed a few years back, out past Galesburg, boxing up her house to move in with her daughter. Her late husband's mother had left behind a squat, drab, matte green vase, no flowers on it, nothing pretty, the kind of thing that had held rubber bands and dead pens on a windowsill for 40 years. And it was already down in the box marked for the church rummage sale. Something made Harriet lift it back out and turn it over, the way I'm asking you to tonight. Pressed into the bottom was a joined AA and an early date. It was an early Van Briggle, from the good years. Not a fortune, but many times the price of everything else in that rummage box, and more than that, it was the one thing left in the house that her husband's mother had chosen and kept. Harriet was the one who couldn't quite send it out the door. That instinct was right the whole time. Now let me be honest the way I promised. Most of the pottery in most houses is worth a modest, honest amount, and I'd be lying to tell you otherwise. I will never tell you your particular vase is worth a number. From across a table I cannot see. What I can tell you is which makers and which marks are worth stopping for, and that anything that makes your heart jump, you carry to a reputable dealer or a certified appraiser and have it looked at in person before you sell it, or set it out, or give it away. Because here's who profits from your not knowing. The thrift store that pulls anything with a good mark off the donation pile to sell online, and leaves the plain glassware out for you. The fellow with a sign that says "We buy old pottery, cash today," who offers you $5 a piece for a whole box and knows exactly which two he's really buying. And the flipper who offers first, and offers low, because the person who knows what they're holding is never the one who offers first. None of that is a crime, it just counts on you never turning the vase over. Before I let you go back to that shelf, here's the thing almost nobody stops to realize. The vases worth real money almost never look like it. They're drab, they're heavy, they're strange, the ones the family calls ugly. What decides the value is a small set of things you can learn. The mark on the bottom, the glaze, hand-painted or molded, an artist's initials, the condition. Those are learnable. You just learned 10 makers worth of them tonight. So here's the short list to carry back to that shelf. An R and a P back to back with little flames, that's Rookwood, and you count the flames for the year. A tall vertical racetrack stamp, Fulper. A joined AA with an early date, Van Briggle. Crisp pine cones and a slightly grainy mark, real Roseville, but soft, mushy, and too perfect, a reproduction. And a thin, crumpled, dented pot with the name OR on the base. You stop everything. If you can't write fast enough, take a picture of the screen right now, and you'll have the whole list in your hand at the cabinet. So tell me down in the comments, what's the oldest piece in your house, and whose hands did it come off of? Your mother's? A grandmother's? A house you helped clear? I read every one, and the story of who owned it is half the value. Next time, we do exactly this for the pressed glass and the cut crystal sitting on the shelf right beside these vases, and the one kind of glass nearly every American home has, without knowing what it really is. So before you clear a single shelf, before you take the first dollar anyone offers you for your mother's vases, turn it over, read the bottom, and believe what it tells you. What everyone recognizes is almost never the thing worth the most, because the whole world already has one. I'll see you at the next table.